Hey bees, Marie here from Humblebee and Me, and today we're making a super versatile body balm I'm calling Cleopatra's Secret. It's inspired by the very popular Egyptian magic. Mine is made with chamomile infused olive oil thickened with beeswax and then spiced up with the additions of bee pollen, bee propolis, and raw honey. Bee pollen is loaded with vitamins and minerals, while propolis is a fantastic healing booster. Honey is full of beneficial enzymes, and because it's mostly sugar, and sugar is a humectant, meaning it attracts moisture to itself, it helps keep your skin soft and supple when you use this balm to hydrate with. Come on, let's get started. Our first two ingredients are 37 grams of chamomile infused olive oil, and you can use plain olive oil if that's what you've got, and 10 grams of beeswax, and you can see I've got lovely raw beeswax here that still smells like honey. So the first thing we're going to do is just take a spoonful or two of this olive oil and reserve it to mix with the rest of our ingredients. And we'll set this aside. And then we're going to put the rest of the olive oil and the beeswax into a heat-resistant glass measuring cup. This is a 2-cup one from Pyrex. Set that aside and add the beeswax. And now we're going to melt these together. So we're going to pop this measuring cup in a small saucepan that has about an inch of water in it, and we're going to put this on the stove over medium heat for 20 to 30 minutes or until the beeswax has melted. Depending on how large your chunks of beeswax are, it could take longer or shorter to melt. All right, let's go. While the beeswax and olive oil melt together, we're going to work on combining the rest of our ingredients. So we're going to need 40 drops of a propolis tincture. So you can see here, this is raw propolis, and it just looks like dirt clods. Propolis is made by bees from essential oils and resins that they collect from the flowers and trees around their hive. But in this form, it's pretty difficult to use. So I've made it into a tincture. And I will pop the link for the instructions on how to do this below, but basically all you have to do is send some of this through your DIY coffee grinder, soak it in some high-proof alcohol, and then strain out the solids, and that'll give you a liquid. So we'll count out 40 drops of this into the reserved olive oil. Okay, there's our propolis. Up next is bee pollen. So this here, this is what bee pollen looks like when it's freshly harvested, and you can see that it's quite large and crumbly, and at this size definitely won't be terribly well inclined to dissolve in water. Oh, hello little bug. This is bee pollen that's been ground. So this is what we're going to use, and you're going to need half a teaspoon of that. So we'll add that. And last but not least, I've got 5 grams of raw honey here. You'll want to use a fairly soft honey. I have some honeys that are like taffy, and that's entirely too sticky and bothersome to try to incorporate in here. Right. And we will blend this together. I generally start with a bit of smooshing to make sure I've brought everything down from the edge of the bowl. And this is not going to incorporate terribly well because, you know, our liquid here is mostly oil, and the pollen and the honey are water soluble. But it will incorporate well enough that we'll be able to blend it in with the oil and wax mixture, and the pollen will dissolve in the honey, so you don't end up with a gritty final balm. All right, I'm gonna whisk this now. At this point, you can see that the propolis and the honey and the pollen have all worked together into a nice, smooth-looking paste. And the additional olive oil is really just helping keep things moving a bit. It's not incorporating, and that's totally fine. It'll incorporate once we add this mixture to our melting olive oil and beeswax concoction that's currently on the stove. Now that the oil and wax have melted together, remove the measuring cup from the water bath and make sure to dry off the outside of the cup so you don't accidentally get any water in the formulation. We need to let the oil and wax cool a bit so we don't cook the raw honey, otherwise it's not raw anymore. So we're just going to stir it for a while and leave it to cool. You want to make sure that you do keep stirring it as it cools. You don't have to stir it constantly, but do come back every few minutes, otherwise it will solidify and then you won't be able to blend this stuff in. So come back every couple minutes, give it a stir, make sure that it doesn't set up into a solid mass, but instead becomes a sort of creamy, thickened bit of goodness. After 5 minutes, the mixture has started to thicken quite a lot, so this is the point where you need to keep stirring it. You want to smush it against the bottom and the sides of your container to make sure you're breaking up any clumps, and make sure you scrape down the sides and then wipe off your spatula. Kind of push everything back down and keep smooshing away. Once the outside of your measuring cup no longer feels quite warm to the touch, and this one definitely still does, then we're ready to add the honey. Once you've reached this point of smooth and sort of runny icing thickness, you're generally good to leave it for a couple minutes at a time and come back to stir it rather than continuing to stir it continuously. Just make sure you try to keep as much of it together as possible, because any bit that's isolated up on the side or on your spatula is going to set up much faster than the bit that's all sort of hanging out with its friends. The oil and wax mixture has been cooling for about 20 minutes now, and you can see that it's lovely and thick and creamy and holds its shape. It doesn't sort of collapse in on itself, so it's definitely sort of more solid than liquid. And to the touch, it's warm, but it's not hot. So now we can start adding some of this. So give it a good smooshing to get it sort of pliable again. And start adding some a little bit at a time and blending it in. This is where these spatulas come in great again. You can really smash the clods up against the bottom and blend them in with the rest of it. And we'll scrape the very last of the pollen and honey mixture out of here. Now we're going to break out a whisk and really get in here. So after that good solid beating, you can see that this is lovely and smooth and no longer has any big clumps of the honey pollen propolis mixture in there anymore. You can give this a little test. See, there's no clods of pollen in there, but my skin is lovely and hydrated. So now we can move this to your tin. Set this aside. So this is a little 2-ounce tin here from Sapphire Blue. if you add up the weight of all of our ingredients, you'll notice that it definitely doesn't equal sort of 2 full ounces. But that's because these tins get their names from the volume or the weight of water that they hold. And because oils are lighter than water, that means that we'll get a lesser weight of oils in a container than the name sort of seems to suggest. And I'm going to go pop this in the fridge so that it doesn't separate as it sets fully. While the balm sets in your fridge, now's a good time to make your labels. So I like these round printable craft labels. I got them on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description box below. So these ones, you can see they're a little bit big for this lid. So I'm going to use a compass to make a smaller circle and cut that out. So that seems to be roughly correct. And that's more or less the circle, center of the circle. So let's all right, that should be good. Maybe a little small, but it's better than a little big. After about 20 minutes in the fridge, our balm has thoroughly chilled through and you're done. Cap it, and there you are. Now you know Cleopatra's secret. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and check the description box below for links to everything I used in this video. See you next time!